teaching artist Barry Shoulder has developed a new style of painting as a result of working with Atelier Interactive Professional Artists Acrylics. Barry is a very experienced artist with a watercolor background who has discovered that interactive has some important characteristics he can make use of. It dilutes beautifully with just water or water and liquid slow medium. It can be kept wet easily to carry out traditional watercolor techniques. It can be used on a larger and bolder scale. In Barry's paintings, he combines traditional watercolor washes with areas of more heavily applied paint in an acrylic manner. In this video, Barry takes us through some techniques which can be used to advantage by beginning painters, but they will also appeal to experienced watercolor artists who want to try something new and different. These works, done on full sheets of watercolor paper, show what can be done when he combines beautiful transparent washes with more heavily applied areas of interactive. And because interactive is the only acrylic that allows him to rehydrate touch-dry paint, Barry can develop his paintings over time, adjusting edges and resolving some areas. Just imagine what you can do when you start to combine techniques and invent your own bigger and bolder paintings using interactive.
Hi, welcome. My name is Barry Shoulder, and I'm here to demonstrate to you today bigger and bolder watercolor techniques using Interactive's professional acrylics. You ask yourself, why would a watercolor guy want to use acrylics? Back in 2007, I was introduced to Interactive Professional Artists Acrylics and was shown how the acrylics rehydrate. They stay wet longer, and the drying can be adjusted by using different mediums that are also available. So I took them home and tried them, and I absolutely fell in love with them. Now, the reason I like interactive acrylics is because, number one, they have so many colors, 75 colors that are available. The colors can be adjusted as far as not only can I use water to thin them, but I also use the slow medium that's available as well. And what that does is it slows the drying time so the painting is more predictable. That's so important. One thing that you run into when you're using watercolors is that a lot of times the paint dries too fast. The paint can get muddy if it's over mixed. But with interactive artists acrylics, you don't have that worry, you don't have that concern. It kind of frees you up a little bit. So you can make adjustments, get it where you want it, and in essence have more success in your painting experience. I'm going to show you how I go about doing this. There's some techniques that I use that are a bit different. But in the long run, I think you'll have a great time. This is a fun technique to use. You get some great results out of this thing. The colors are brilliant. All right, I want to talk about materials that I'm going to use. First off, I like to use styrofoam plates. I like the styrofoam plates because I like to work big. I'm going to use big brushes. So I want to have room on my palette to be able to moisten my colors and get everything good and wet before I start painting. Sometimes I put a couple of colors on the palette. Next thing I'm going to use is large brushes. I'm going to use 2-inch brushes. I'm going to use 1.5-inch brush, 1-inch brush, and a couple of liners. These are my standbys. The brushes that I'm using are synthetic brushes. I don't normally use sable brushes because they're a little on the expensive side, and these seem to work real well. If you do have sable brushes, it's not to worry because Interactive will clean out real good. They don't. There's no problem with the fear of ruining a brush. The next thing I want to talk about is the colors. Now, Interactive has 75 colors. They're just absolutely beautiful. I mainly stick with transparent colors because, again, I'm kind of a watercolor guy, and watercolors are transparent. And Interactive has transparent. I use some semi-transparent. And I use a couple of opaque colors periodically. So I kind of separate my palettes. I put perhaps the warm colors together, cool colors together. The last thing, beyond using water to thin my paint, is I like to use the slow medium. The slow medium is the greatest stuff because I can actually, by adding the slow medium to my palette just a little bit with each color, like this, I can slow down the time that I work with the paint. Gives me a chance to make adjustments, even pick up color if I need to. And so that's pretty much all the materials that I use. I use a large water bucket. I always want clean water, lots of it, because I'm using a big brush. And I use a roll of toilet paper as a blotter. It works great, it's cheap, and it just works for me. Okay, these are some of the colors that I like to use when I'm doing the big and bold watercolor techniques. These are all, again, interactive. Most of these are transparent. They're dioxazine purple, transparent forest green, the Indian yellow, trans yellow, red gold. These are all transparent colors. I do use some opaque colors. The brilliant magenta is a beautiful color. The yellow ochre is always a good color. And I use a few semi-transparents. The ultramarine blue is a good one. The orange, there's several oranges that Interactive makes. I choose this one because it's semi-transparent. The permanent green lights, and that's like a chartreuse that's beautiful. So these are some of the colors that I use. Typically when I'm painting, I'll use anywhere between maybe 4 or 5 of these at the most. You don't want to get overly busy. And then when you go into painting with your darks, going into darks, the mix of these particular colors will give you nice darks for your accents and your shadows. Okay, let me tell you about what I'm going to paint on. I'm going to use Gemini 140-pound cold-pressed watercolor paper. This is the full sheet here. I like to use this paper because it's got additional sizing in it. Sizing keeps the paint from being totally absorbed into the surface, so the colors stay on the surface a little bit more. You get a lot brighter color saturation. Now, before I start painting, I've got a value painting that I've kind of made up here, and I follow this pretty closely. What I'm after here is I want to do light values, very light values of color in the sky. I want to use dark values, dark colors in the foreground, and I want to have a white area. It's very important to have a white area in the painting because this is really what's going to make